Global Scan, show that gives you 360-degree view of major global developments of the week. Public hearings for impeachment inquiry against U.S. President Donald Trump is set to begin. Meanwhile, collective outcry against the brutal massacre of the Mormon community members in Mexico. Also, a closer look at the anti-government protests in Pakistan and also the growing phenomena of civil unrest raging across the world. Meanwhile, India decides not to be part of the free trade grouping of the RCEP. All that and more in Global Scan. First up, the headlines. Donald Trump impeachment public hearings to begin next week. Announcement comes after several weeks of closed-door depositions by former and current Trump administration officials with the U.S. House panels. Two former Twitter employees accused of spying for Saudi Arabia. Men were reportedly paid hundreds of thousands of dollars by the Saudi government. China and France reaffirm support for Paris Climate Agreement. Both countries issue joint statement reaffirming their strong support for the irreversible Paris Agreement on climate change. With elections round the corner, campaigning picks up in UK. Labour leader Jeremy Corbyn unveils campaign bus with the message, "It is time for real change," also the party slogan. Hundreds attend the funeral for members of Mormon community in northern Mexico who died in an ambush by gunmen. Initial investigations by Mexican authorities suggest the attack was a case of mistaken identity by a drugs cartel, but victim's family disputed. United Nations launches relief efforts for flood victims in Somalia, deliver vital food packages and supplies to thousands of displaced people. Heavy rains claimed 10 lives and displaced more than 270,000 in Somalia, destroying infrastructure and livelihood. And first up, news from the Americas. Now, the U.S. House of Representatives Intelligence Committee will kick off a series of public hearings in the impeachment inquiry into President Donald Trump next week. This was confirmed by the panel's Democratic chairman, who said on Wednesday, William Taylor, the top U.S. diplomat in Ukraine, and Deputy Assistant Secretary of State George Kent will testify on November 13th, while former U.S. Ambassador to Ukraine, Mary Yovanovitch, will appear before the panels on November 15th.
We will begin our open hearings in the impeachment inquiry next week. We will be beginning with the testimony of Ambassador Taylor and Ambassador Kent on Wednesday, and we will have Ambassador Yovanovitch testify on Friday. These will be the first of the open hearings.
The Democrats had said they had enough material to move forward with the public impeachment hearings, which would be likely a prelude to articles of impeachment, formal charges against Trump being brought to a vote in the House. If the House votes to approve the articles of impeachment, the Republican-controlled Senate would then hold a trial on whether to remove Trump from the office. Two former employees of Twitter and a third man from Saudi Arabia face U.S. charges for spying for Kingdom by digging up private user data and giving it to Saudi officials in exchange for payment. This is according to a filed complaint. As per the complaint, Ali Al-Zabara and Ahmad Abu Mamo, who worked for Twitter, and Ahmad Al-Mutari, who then worked for Saudi royal family, faced charges of working for the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia without registering as foreign agents. Abu Mamo repeatedly accessed the Twitter account of a prominent critic of the Saudi royal family in early 2015. At one instance, he was able to view the email address and telephone number associated with the account as well. He also accessed the account of second Saudi critic to get personally the identifiable information. The Las Vegas City Council on Wednesday approved a controversial ordinance that makes camping or sleeping on the street illegal. The measure, which passed in a 5-2 vote, makes it a misdemeanor to rest or sleep on downtown street as well as other residential areas if beds are available at shelters. Violators could face a fine of up to $1,000 or be jailed for up to 6 months.
This is a first step. We wanted to do something. We've been waiting 20 years.
And the critics have blasted the move, arguing that it unfairly criminalizes homelessness and will only further impoverish those slapped with fines and a criminal record. But supporters say the ban will help the homeless people by moving them to a safer environment. Businesses and residents have long complained about the incumbents negatively affecting their property. Hundreds of friends and family members gathered in a remote northern Mexican region on November 7 to mourn the American citizens who were slain brutally in a burst of bullets and fire earlier this week. Members of breakaway Mormon communities that settled in Mexico decades ago, Langford and 2 other women and 6 children were ambushed in Sonora State on November 4th, leading U.S. President Donald Trump to urge Mexico and the United States to wage war together on the drug cartels. Authorities and relatives say the killings appear to be the work of Juarez and Sinaloa cartels, which fight for control of lucrative drug routes that run through the sparsely populated mountainous areas into the United States. Friends and family members who gathered to mourn demanded justice for the deceased and for the community.
This should not have happened to 3 women, and the children that were all hurt, injured, and died needlessly. And I just feel like it absolutely has to be taken care of.
Let's now move to Asia. The 35th ASEAN summit concluded on Monday. While addressing a news conference, Thai Prime Minister Prayut Chan-o-cha said he is confident that Vietnam will continue to bring the Southeast Asian bloc to a sustainable region. 15 Asian countries agreed on terms and conditions, but India delayed its decision on joining because the country's demand was not met. The Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, that's RCEP, is backed by China and also brings in 10-member association of Southeast Asian nations, Japan, South Korea, Australia and New Zealand. And keeping national interest above geopolitical treaties and a desire to be part of one of the largest free trade agreement, Prime Minister Narendra Modi took a firm stand and led from the front as India decided not to join the RCEP. PM Modi took the stand after it became clear that the final RCEP document will not address the issues that were considered non-negotiable by India.
The world had its eyes on the outcome of the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement. The agreement would have been the world's largest free trade zone. However, post the 3rd edition of the RCEP summit, India decided not to join RCEP, owing to the unresolved issues between India and partner nations. Taking a firm stand, Prime Minister Modi asserted that India will not become a part of the agreement until it gets a fair and balanced deal. The PM said, and I quote, "India stands for greater regional integration as well as for freer trade and adherence to a rule-based international order. India has been proactively, constructively and meaningfully engaged in the RCEP negotiations since inception. The present form of RCEP agreement does not fully reflect the basic spirit and the agreed guiding principles of RCEP. It also does not address satisfactorily India's outstanding issues and concerns. In such a situation, it is not possible for India to join RCEP agreement."
India conveyed its decision at the summit not to join the RCEP agreement. This reflects both our assessment of the current global situation as well as of the fairness and balance of the agreement. India had significant issues of core interest that remained unresolved. In his remarks on this subject, Prime Minister highlighted that he was guided by the impact it would have on the lives and livelihoods of all Indians, especially vulnerable sections of society.
According to the Free Trade Agreement, the regulations for import and export of goods will be eased. Under this agreement, the member states will have to reduce taxes and build an ecosystem conducive to trade. Post the signing of the agreement, the member states will get an increased access to goods and services amongst each other. Apart from the 10 ASEAN member states, India, China, Japan, Australia, New Zealand and South Korea were to be part of the RCEP agreement. With Sudhir Yadav and Ravi Dhiman in Bangkok, Global Scan Desk, DD India.
French President Emmanuel Macron and Chinese President Xi Jinping on November 6th issued a joint statement reaffirming their strong support for the Paris Agreement on climate change, from which the United States announced its exit earlier this week.
I deplore the choices made by some others, but I want to see them as marginal choices. Because when China, the European Union, Russia, which ratified the Paris Agreements a few weeks ago, engage with firmness, the isolated choice of one or another country is not enough to change the course of the world. It will only lead to them being edged out.
The Trump administration has already filed paperwork to withdraw the United States from the Paris Agreement on combating climate change. The vast majority of national commitments made in 2015 Paris Agreement are not enough to prevent serious harm from global warming, scientists say in a new research report. China and France pledged at this year's G20 summit to update their contributions against climate change beyond their current ones to reflect the highest possible ambition. French president is visiting China for the second time since he took office. During his last trip, last year, he said Beijing's flagship Belt and Road project to develop global trade infrastructure should not be one way. Saudi Arabia's biggest oil company, Saudi Aramco, has become public. Owned by Saudi government, the company has finally kick-started its initial public offering, announcing its intention to float on the domestic bourse. The company said the final offer price, number of shares to be sold and percentage of shares to be sold will be determined at the end of the book-building period. Final pricing for the initial public offering is scheduled for December 5th, and the world's most profitable company is expected to start trading on the Riyadh bourse 6 days later from December 11th. Saudi Aramco is the same company which suffered major blow on its oil facilities following 2 missile attacks on its plant in September this year. On to our next story. Anti-government protests are raging in the heart of Pakistan and Islamabad. Efforts to break the deadlock between the opposition and the Imran Khan government remained inconclusive as the massive protest led by firebrand cleric cum politician Fazlur Rahman against Prime Minister Imran Khan continues. And we'll try and understand what is going on in Pakistan, the protest against the government that is taking place in Pakistan, what is leading to it, what is the kind of impact. We'll try and look at some of the key points that are emanating from it. Big challenge for Prime Minister of Pakistan, Imran Khan. So thousands of anti-government protesters are on the highway. About 15,000 to 18,000 is the number on the highway leading to the capital Islamabad, who are protesting against the Imran Khan government led by Mohammad Fazlur Rahman, JUIF party, that's Jamiat Ulema Islam. Fazl, who's leading the protest, he's the man who's at the heart of these protests. PMLN, that's Pakistan Muslim League, Nawaz, and PPP, Pakistan People's Party, they've also backed the protests, but the leaders are not as vociferously speaking against the government, although they support this people's movement against Imran Khan. They demand Prime Minister Imran Khan's resignation and fresh elections. They're saying that the Prime Minister has to step down, and the reasons we'll talk about in a bit. Khan's PTI-led government stands firmly against the protests. They reject most of the accusations made by the protesters, and they are saying that they're ready to talk, but Prime Minister will not resign. The challenge that is faced by the government is weak economy. Growth rate is 3.3%. United Nations a month ago spoke about the crisis, economic crisis in Pakistan. Inflation, how things become expensive, is at 11.4% and rising. Commodities like oil, food for the masses, they've become expensive and unaffordable for the people. Lower and middle class Pakistanis are hit hard. Well, people who really have to depend on salaries and on expenditure, they're the worst affected. job is stagnating. Young people don't have job in Pakistan. The slow economic growth is contributing to it, and vice versa, because people don't have jobs, they're not working productively. The economy is also going down. The opposition parties allege, main accusation that coming in, there's a rigging in the 2018 general elections, something that led to Imran Khan becoming the prime minister and the other parties losing. The government rejects this claim. They're saying the protest that is taking place, it's only taking place because their leaders are facing anti-corruption investigation and the drive of the government. That is the reason why these leaders have come to the streets, giving it a shape of people's protest. But in fact, but this is what the Prime Minister and the administration is saying. But those were some of the ways in which Pakistan is facing a challenge. But it is not just Pakistan. Week after week, we are getting you updates on how angry protesters and protests are raging across the world. A Chilean police major who shot 2 students during a school protest has been arrested as a wave of political unrest enters third week. In Iraq, weeks of deadly unrest showed no signs of abating. In the latest security forces shot dead at least 6 protesters in Baghdad earlier this week. Meanwhile, a Hong Kong student who fell during clashes between police and protesters earlier this week has died, marking the first casualty of the anti-government demonstrations that have overtaken the city. Meanwhile, a surge of climate activism is flooding Australia as the country falls behind on its promise to reduce emissions, effectively ignoring the Paris Agreement. And now we'll try and understand the common theme that runs across most of these civil rebellions, civil protests that are going on across the world. We look at some of the highlights, why people are on the streets. So these protests are one of the highest ever. Many compare them with the 1960s civil disobedience and also civil rights movement that took place in America and elsewhere. So that is the kind of number, the frequency of it taking place across the world. So an important point, these protests are seen as one of the highest that have ever taken place simultaneously across the world. What is leading to it? Rising living costs, stagnating middle class. People don't have jobs, they don't have enough money to lead a good life. Rampant inequality, the youth is radicalized, they're forced to the streets in Chile. The young people don't have money to pay tickets for the metro, so they're protesting. Important data there. Why the inequality gap is increasing. Billionaires, a report says, grew richer. The cumulative wealth by 2.5 billion a day in 2018. That's how the rich are becoming richer. What about the poorer? 3.8 billion poorer. That's about more than half the population of the world. By 500 millions a day. The cumulative wealth of the poor people is decreasing across the globe. Lack of action on climate crisis is also leading people to the streets. We showed you visuals of Australia earlier. This extinction protest that is taking place in many parts of the world. Internet, social media is aiding the protests. It's not really is the origin of the protest, but it is helping people to come together. Therefore, the administration is also clamping on internet. Top to bottom power system is being challenged. People don't want the government to dictate the manner in which they want to live, in the manner in which they want to spend their money. Uprising also against authoritarianism. We saw example in Hong Kong, different kinds of government, the Chinese communist government and the democracy in Hong Kong. So stifled democracy, endemic corruption. Examples could be Lebanon, Chile again, where people are protesting against corruption and the inefficiency of the government. Protests often don't yield in the desired results. We see the kind of violence that is taking place in Iraq. People are protesting, but the forces are opening fire on their own people. And one of the challenges of this protest are leaderless campaign. Many of these campaigns across the world don't have particular leaders. The challenges are both sides. One, people are not able to put forth their views at one go in a comprehensive, cohesive manner. On the other hand, without leaders, the governments are also able to not curb the protests because you never know which part of the city or the country will the next protest crop up. But those were some of the ways in which these protests are taking place across the world. And now we get you news from Europe. Election times in UK. British Prime Minister Boris Johnson visited a crisp factory in Northern Ireland during his first campaign day ahead of general elections on December 12th. Johnson exuded confidence that he alone can deliver Brexit. Meanwhile, Labour leader Jeremy Corbyn unveiled a campaign bus with the message says it is time for real change. It's also the party's slogan ahead of UK's general elections on December 12th.
This is your chance to change things. This is your chance to build a society that's fit for the next generation by caring for this generation, by investing in their future. And I'm so proud of our party, our determination and our unity to win this election.
Meanwhile, Britain's smaller pro-European parties announced to remain in alliance for the next month's general election, in which they will step aside for each other in about 60 constituencies that covers around 10% of the seats in the parliament. At the start of the election campaign, Conservatives enjoy a lead over the Labour between 7 to 17% points, though pollsters warn that voters are volatile and their models are wilting besides the Brexit furnace. Weeks after British police found 39 bodies of Vietnamese citizens in a container truck, police in Vietnam have arrested 8 people in connection with the case, bringing the total number of arrests in Vietnam to 10. The number includes 2 people who were summoned last week. Nha Gan Province Police Chief Nguyen Hu Khao said that police has launched investigation to eradicate the rings which bring people illegally to Britain. He added that the police are treating the tragedy as a smuggling incident rather than a case of people trafficking. British police had last week charged 2 men with manslaughter in the same case. British police found the bodies of 39 people in a truck container in an industrial estate to the east of London on October 23rd. The driver of the truck, a 25-year-old man from Northern Ireland, was also arrested on suspicion of murder. Up next, news from Africa. Dozens of people are still missing after an ambush on workers near a Canadian-owned mine in Burkina Faso. At least 37 people were dead and 60 wounded in the attack by gunmen. It is supposed to be the worst attack in years in the country that is plagued by jihadist violence. Quebec-based gold mining company Samafo said that 5 of its buses with military escort came under fire on the road leading to a mine in the eastern part of the country. The assailant's identity is still unclear, but parts of Burkina Faso are struggling to combat the surging Islamist violence, with several people displaced from their homes. The country's president lamented the attack in a televised address.
Once again, our people are in mourning because of terrorist groups that are multiplying and carrying out murderous actions against our civilians, our defense force, and security forces.
Moving on, the United Nations launched relief efforts for flood victims in Somalia on November 4th, delivering vital food packages and supplies to thousands of displaced people. By November 1st, heavy rains had killed at least 10 people and displaced more than 270,000 in Somalia, destroying infrastructure and livelihood, according to United Nations. In the town of Beledweyne in central Somalia, a river overflowed and about 10 people were killed when a boat capsized trying to rescue stranded residents. East Africa has been experiencing heavy rains with floods forcing families from their homes. The Indian Ocean dipole, the Indian Ocean's equivalent of Pacific Ocean-based El Nino, is at its strongest since 2006. The regional trade bloc of East African nations, known as the Intergovernmental Authority on Development, had informed about this. Nigerian firefighters battled a blaze which ripped through a popular local market in Nigeria's commercial capital, Lagos, on November 5th. General Manager of the Lagos Fire Department said that proximity of the shops in market inhibited the fire service's ability to tackle the fires. No death has been reported, but many properties were damaged. The cause of the fire is not known as yet. And now we get you all the news from the world of sports. The Australian women's national soccer team will earn the same pay as their male counterparts and have an equal split of commercial revenues as well for the first time under a new deal announced by the Football Federation Australia on Wednesday. The national men's Socceroos team have historically been paid more than the women's Matildas and earned a greater share of commercial revenues. Ashley Barty finished the season in style by beating defending champion Elina Svitolina 6-4, 6-3 to add the Women's Tennis Association or WTA finals title to her end-of-season world #1 ranking. Barty became the first Australian to win the WTA finals since Avon Cowley claimed her second title in 1976. Lewis Hamilton secured his 6th Formula One World Championship, a title in the United States Grand Prix event. It was won by the Mercedes teammate Valtteri Bottas. Hamilton finished second at the Circuit of Americas to become only the second driver after retired Ferrari great and 7-time champion Michael Schumacher to win 6 titles. Red Bull's Max Verstappen took the 3rd place in the race, while Ferrari's Charles Leclerc finished 4th and took an extra point for the fastest lap.
It's just overwhelming, if I'm really honest. It was such a tough race today. Yesterday was a difficult day for us. Valtteri did a fantastic job, so huge congratulations to him. And today I really just wanted to recover and deliver the 1-2 for the team. And I didn't think the 1 stop was going to be possible, but I worked as hard as I could. And
it's a nice win. Feels good. Yeah, it just felt very, very good since yesterday in the car. And yeah, we had a strong pace, so yeah, we're very, very happy about the win.
Let's now find out what is happening in the world of cinema.
The Golden Jubilee edition of the International Film Festival of India, or IFFI, is all set to spellbound audience with its opening and closing films. The extravaganza begins with Despite the Fog, an Italian movie directed by Goran Paskaljevic, while renowned Iranian director Mohsen Makhmalbaf's Margay and her mother will bring the curtains down.
Aber ich muss dringend ins DV.
Treten Sie zurück! Außerdem sitzt sie links in Ihrem Flieger.
The Midwest Storm Fabric, a romantic drama set in 1961, directed by Martin Schreer, is what film enthusiasts are looking for.
Ein Prestigeprojekt des Sozialismus.
Give it up for one of my favorite artists of all time and your rock icon, Liam Gallagher!
It was a star-studded night when Oasis frontman Liam Gallagher took home the first ever MTV Rock Icon Award, MTV Europe Music Awards in Spain's Seville. The show, celebrating Year of the Woman, saw Taylor Swift and newcomer Billie Eilish emerging as big winners of the night. While Taylor Swift won the Best US Act and Best Video, Eilish was awarded Best Song and Best New. Footballer Cristiano Ronaldo was the surprise guest on the red carpet as music stars from around the world gathered for the annual MTV Europe Music Awards. She made you laugh on several occasions with a dose of her witty humor. The most popular female comedian of all times, Ellen DeGeneres, is now being given Lifetime Achievement Award at the Golden Globes next year, recognizing her 25-year career on US television, the organizers have said. The 61-year-old TV host will be the only second recipient of the prestigious Carol Burnett Award. The ceremony will be held in Beverly Hills on 5th of January. Todd Phillips and Joaquin Phoenix have delivered an unstoppable hit, Joker, which has become the highest-grossing R-rated film of all times, has not slowed down at all. The film has already crossed ticket sales of $900 million globally, with many fans hoping it to set new records at the box office.
But I do.
Global Scan Desk, DD India.
And with that, we conclude this edition of Global Scan. News and updates continue after a short break. I'll take your leave. Namaskar.